Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sampson, Stephanie Phillips with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we have Karen Bennett-Haron, retired Las Vegas Sisters of Peace. Karen and I, we go back 20 plus years, so this is probably going to be an interesting show. But before we get to, I'm going to call her Judge Karen Haron because. Before we get to Judge Karen Haron, Stephanie, what do you got?
I got a lot of announcements, guys. Don't forget about the book. You can get on Amazon, $14.99. Steve wrote this, How to Navigate Nevada's Family Court System. If you know anybody who cannot afford an attorney and is stuck in family court and a divorce and is fighting over kids and all of this book is a self-help book. It will help them through. So please spread the word about this. We also have a merch page. It's VIPImerch.com. We have t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, glasses. We have all kinds of stuff on that merch page and merch store. So please check that out. Also, we have sponsorship spots. So anybody with a business, a nonprofit, if you're a candidate and you want to advertise on our show, we have room for yard size signs. We've got 2 up front and we have space behind us. If you want to know more about that and advertise on our show, get in touch with us. We have well over 10,000 views a month. Depending on how many shows we do, we have much more if we do more shows. But a lot of exposure there. Also, Jim, this is for you. I hope you're listening. This is from Jim Jonas. If you have an interest in dinosaurs to purchase, please visit WyomingDinosaurRanch.com. That is WyomingDinosaurRanch.com. They have real dinosaurs for sale, including a Triceratops. Please, only serious buyers should inquire. For more information, you can call Jim Jonas at 702-517-8975 or Jake Harris at 307-629-4414. Also, what? Okay. Do I sound like one of those commercials?
Go ahead.
Is he on there?
Good.
Huh? What's wrong with my mic?
Lower.
Oh, lower. Okay.
Yeah, it's hitting your hair.
Oh, sorry. Okay, how's that guy? So, we also have this obsessed fan that seems to watch us each week. And it's interesting. We're talking with the FBI and our attorney about cyber stalking and cyber harassing. So if we get to the point of a lawsuit and discovery, it's going to be interesting to see who is paying you to do these things and say these things. So I would watch it if I were you, Skippy. You know who I'm talking about. And then finally, I'll get to my rant. Last night, the speech. I thought it was great. I think Trump is doing great for our country.
What speech?
He spoke to to Congress, joint session of Congress. And when he talked about and he highlighted DJ Daniels, the 13-year-old boy who is a brain cancer survivor, he gave him a badge for the Secret Service. Yeah, and everybody saw that. And the Democrats sat. They didn't clap. Not one stood up. And also when they talked about Laken Riley and that legislation, the girl, she was a college girl that died at the hands of an illegal immigrant. Mm-hmm. Also the girl, I forget her name, the all-star volleyball player who was hit in the head and could have been killed by a biological boy that they put in the girls' sport program. None of the Democrats stood. And those issues, I mean, I know that we disagree on policy.
We should unite.
I get that. Yeah. But those particular issues, those are human issues. What if that was your granddaughter? What if that was your grandson? I don't understand how you can't get past, I didn't like Biden. I didn't like his policy or decisions. But when you're talking about humanity, and just people, You got to get past that. So that was a complete disgrace to me. Sorry if anybody's offended out there, but I was highly offended last night.
Well,
And then,
don't be offended. Can I just say something as probably the only Democrat in the room?
yeah.
I think I didn't watch the speech, and I'm glad I didn't. But I did see the clip of the young man who he named as an honorary Secret Service, and on the face of it, it was very touching, but it was also very performative, given the fact that he's canceling research that would actually go to help his type of cancer. I think sometimes people have to look beyond the performative. And I think both sides are guilty of doing these props, and we can talk about that later on. I'm very to the point, and I don't like a lot of BS. But using a child in that way and knowing that you are canceling all kinds of actual efforts that would actually make it better, not just for him, but for other children that are impacted with this proposed budget that he's advancing, you're going to have a significant drop in Medicaid. And Medicaid is not only used for poor people, it's used for children. Almost every children's hospital in this nation is subsidized by Medicaid in some form or fashion. And so the result is going to be that children who look like that kid who he was giving the Secret Service award to will not be serviced, and they will not get the kind of help that I think they should be entitled to get. So I think that may explain some of why people decided not to stand up. I know that there's been a lot of tit for tat when the Democrats were in office and Biden was president. There was a whole lot of back and forth and a whole lot of yelling from the floor and a whole lot of not attending inaugurations and a whole lot of that. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But I think it's sad that a child would have to be used in that way. And that's just my rant.
And that is, and of course, the one side is going to look at it that way. And the media is going to push that the kid was a prop and, used for this. I don't
watch it. So
I don't agree with that.
I didn't get that push. That's just my own, I've read.
It's that part. They can twist that however they want and use that. And that's just a matter of opinion. It's
not. It's a matter of fact. The things that are being cut,
people will
NIH grants are being cut. Medicaid is being cut. I mean, these are all things that are written down. This isn't something somebody made up.
No, I meant the kid being used as a prop. That's people are going to think that some are and some are, and that's just whoever has that opinion and that's fine. But anyway, I thought that part was a disgrace. But also, I wanted to mention.
Can I just piggyback on that? I just wish that the amount of energy that the two parties put into fighting each other, they should put that energy to benefit the American people as a whole. Mm-hmm. Because every time you turn around, they're always fighting each other. Come on, man, just in the words of Rodney King, the late Rodney King, can't we all just get along? We all Americans.
But I think it's a little bigger than that, Steve, to be honest with you. And I've always had this thing because people talk about, you're not nice or you're not being nice to them or whatever it is. I don't necessarily think we all need to get along in that sense. It'd be great if we could, but the reality is humans are different and people are going to disagree and not always get along. But there are some basic universal principles of civility and being a civilized country that I think we should all adopt and adapt to. And I don't think that's a double standard kind of an adaptation when it applies on one side of the fence and then it doesn't apply on the other. I mean, there's some things, if you're talking about, you guys are our veterans group. Veterans are being very impacted by this budget. This isn't an opinion. This is, the reality. I have a neighbor who's a physician at a VA hospital. And she's just coming undone because people that were coming to work, surgeons and so forth, they were told, your job is no longer available, even though they were moving across the country and even though they had been extended an offer. There's been a lot of recklessness when it comes to people who are negatively impacted by this particular budget strategy that the Trump administration has imploded. And it is, I mean, there. As a lawyer, I don't even know. I can't count the ways in which all of this is like terribly illegal and undermining Congress and just completely uprooting our system of government in a way that I don't think we'll ever be able to put back together again. And the people that are going to lose, like you were talking about, we were talking off camera about, when parents get into it, the kids are the ones that suffer. At this level, with all of that back and forth, the general public, the middle to low income public, the public that is disabled or otherwise unable to do everything for themselves, they're the ones that are going to be hit the hardest. I mean, it is, whether it's Social Security, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's Medicare, those thresholds are now being breached. And I don't know how you come back from that, because now you're going to have a trust issue too. Which
I'm liking what I'm hearing from you. It sounds like you're running for something. What are you running for?
No.
Maybe she's looking at the Supreme Court seat.
No.
Supreme Court seat?
Supreme Court?
No.
You're going to run for Herndon seat?
No. God, no.
Maybe
we can talk about that.
Maybe she'll say it off camera.
Just kidding.
No.
But I mean, seriously, I'm liking what I'm hearing, though.
No, seriously, because you have to sometimes in the midst of all of this. That's why I was telling you I don't look at a lot of local or national media a lot. I read a lot. I do rely on print a lot. But I think that when you follow the money, that tells you everything you need to go. No, my dad used to say all the time, you want to know what somebody cares about? Look where they spend their money. And
that's exactly what they're doing in Washington. And they're finding billions and billions of wasteful spending.
All of that's been pushed back. I mean, of the 10 cuts that he claims he was able to do, the co-president or whatever he is, unelected technocrat, whatever he may be,
talking about
Elon Musk, whatever role he may have.
She said co-president.
This stuff is not factually based. I mean, if you say that there were a gazillion people that are over 200 that were receiving Social Security, and that was not the case. If you say that you've saved all this money in defense spending, and then when it comes down to showing the actual receipts, as the kids say, we don't have them. So I'm a little confused about all this savings. I know, having been a government employee for all my working life, there is definitely waste and mismanagement and all overruns and all of that. I know all about the stories about the Pentagon. You get a nail at Home Depot for 10 cents. You go to the Pentagon, it's like $50 a nail, because as I used to say down at the courthouse, somebody's cousin got a contract, and that's the way they inflated it. And that's the reality. But we're talking about a multiple $1 trillion situation. So it sounds like a lot to me and you, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. And there's no attention given to how these things are interconnected. So you fire a nuclear scientist, and then a day later, you got to go and find them and ask them to come back because, we didn't know you did that. And then you have people, you don't even have, it's just at the USDA, our meat inspectors, all of those people are now not working. So what does that mean for us as the general public in terms of food safety? I just wish that if you're going to do it, you would do it in a thoughtful, and this has been my plea even before the Trump administration, thoughtful, look at how things are interconnected, what impacts something else to make sure that it's going to have the best benefit. It all works together as a whole, not in silos. It just doesn't function that way.
But no one said a word when Clinton fired almost 400,000 federal workers The media didn't come on.
Well,
There was no fear mongering. There wasn't any of that stuff. Not like what they do to Trump, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Well, I think we're in a different time than Clinton. I mean, in terms of access to information,
we're a lot more
now.
in debt.
Yeah, I mean,
We need to cut a lot more.
I mean, a lot of people like Clinton. He was not one of my favorite. He was not one of my favorite presidents. That's for sure. But
he could play a mean sax.
Yeah. That's when
He
all
liked
that
his
nonsense
cigars.
started. So we started voting for people because they play the sax instead of that they actually are going to do what they say they're going to do. And there's a whole nother story. But anyway, I don't know.
We need to talk
we didn't
about
have
you at
access.
some point here.
Yeah, I don't think we had access to the media or information the way we do now. I mean, now you can't.
Social media is
it's
kicking
just
butt.
you have to be so overly stimulated. It's ridiculous. You can't get away from it. You really can't. No matter how hard you try, unless you just turn off every device, including, everything. Right?
Even the dogs know.
Everybody's like, okay, enough already. But it's just the nature of where we are in technology land now. So, and we've got, all these highbrow technology folks running the country. So I guess we've got more of that to come. So we'll see.
I'm kind of liking what I'm hearing from you. We need to talk after the show.
Okay.
He's going to get you to run for something again.
No, he won't do that.
So much for your retirement.
No. My retirement is alive and well. Thank God. Yeah. No. Mm-mm.
Let's find out what she's been doing since she's been retired.
Yeah, we'll ask her. Ms. Phillips, are you?
I'm good. I'm done. I think wait a second. No. Poor Congressman Sylvester Turner. He is from Texas. In fact, he took over from the late Sheila Jackson, and he was 70 years old. And after the speech last night, he went to the hospital and he suddenly died. I think they conferred, just a few hours after that. So
probably after listening to Trump. That's a joke.
Our condolences to the family, and I just wanted to announce that as well, because that was pretty shocking.
This is the first I'm hearing about him.
Yeah, I just had found out about that, so wanted to mention that. Okay, I'm done now. You can go ahead. Sorry that took a while.
Wow. For a minute, I thought we were interviewing you, me and Judge Bennett here.
I know that, we had a lot of announcements to make. I probably forgot something, but,
Judge Bennett-Haron.
Yes.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Karen.
Karen.
Okay.
Karen. We've known each other. I've appeared before you several times.
Did you have to recuse yourself? No.
She wanted to beat my butt one time.
Probably.
No.
I'll come off this bench, boy.
You probably deserved it.
Yeah. If I said that, he did.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Please tell us about yourself, a bio.
Oh my goodness. Okay, born and raised here in Las Vegas. Went away for college and law school. I went to college in Virginia and law school in Houston, Texas, where the congressman was based. In fact, fun fact, Sheila Jackson Lee was a judge at the time, and she sponsored our Black Student Union group and law school, and all of our Christmas parties were held at her home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was very, very gracious in that way. And so my plan, and when you make plans, when you make God laugh, that's what they say, right? So my plan, I had been offered a job with Shell Oil. This was in the 80s. I graduated from law school in 86. Yeah, 86.
I was in Rico about a year ago.
Okay, yeah. So I got a job offer from them. I had interned with them since my second year in law school. And for the first time ever that I had ever heard of this happening, the job offer was frozen. And I guess that's kind of why I relate to some of this that's going on now, because I know what that's like. You got this job and you're all excited, and then they say, oh, wait. And that's because we were going through the oil industry was just terrible at that time. So my dad said, okay, you can stay for a while and let's see what happens, So I had a good time in Houston for about 4 months on my dad's time. And then he said,
On my dad's
okay,
time.
right. And then he said,
Thanks, Dad.
I think you probably need to come on home because this doesn't look like it's going to ease up any. So I came back home and went to work as a law clerk for Thomas Foley, who was a district court judge at that time.
What year was this?
1986, seven, right? I'm getting old now. I'm getting the dates. Yeah, 87.
You still
So
look good, though.
no, thank you. So so I clerked for him. His family was a very established legal
Minded.
Well, they're all lawyers. It was a bunch of brothers, all lawyers. The federal courthouse was named after one of his brothers, Roger. And John was an attorney here. George was an attorney, and Tom was an attorney, and then became a judge. And I was his law clerk, which was a great experience. And from there, went to work at the Federal Public Defender's Office under Franny Forsman.
Okay.
I worked there for a while, and then became ultimately.
So you know Myron Levitt?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Myron Levitt was on the bench at the time that I clerked for Judge Foley. In fact, I was Judge Foley's department was 13, Judge Levitt's department was 12, and Judge Guy was courtroom 11, and we were all in the same hallway in the old courthouse. So that tells you how.
The one across the street from the new one.
No. The one.
The federal courthouse.
No.
Oh, the district.
District court.
Oh, the one that D's own now.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I went to work. I told you, Federal Public Defenders, and then ultimately I became the general counsel for what was at that time the Las Vegas Housing Authority. It's now the Regional Housing Authority of Southern Nevada. So I should know because my husband. That's where I met my husband. My husband is the CFO for the agency and has been there now for 36 years.
Does he still work?
Mm-hmm. Oh. Mm-hmm. Yep, he says he's never going to retire.
You cracked that whip.
Yeah, no, he says he loves his job. So, who am I? So, I worked with the Housing Authority. I tell everybody that was probably the best job I have ever had. The most I learned so much through that experience. What did you do with the Housing Authority? So I was their general counsel.
Oh, okay.
And so in the agency, the Housing Authority provides subsidized housing to low income and no income people. It provides, you probably are familiar with Section 8 vouchers, but it also provides public housing. It provides senior housing. It provides housing for veterans. It provides, and it is the largest landlord in the state of Nevada. So with that comes a plethora of issues that you have to face. And I learned premise liability issues, fighting with Washington issues on funding, construction defect stuff, a lot of that.
Money missing issues?
A lot of, money, sometimes money missing, a lot of labor stuff. I had a very, very well-rounded exposure to a number of social issues. When I went to work, another fun fact, when I went to work for the Housing Authority, the Housing Authority had been sued by a class action lawsuit of predominantly women who had been discriminated against by the prior administration, and they had to pay rent in addition to their regular rent. They had to rent their stoves and refrigerators, which is completely wrong. Okay, but at that time, that the executive director at that time thought that was a good thing to do. He also imposed fines.
Wow.
And he did a lot of things. Anyway,
So what did you do about it?
Well, I wasn't there then.
Oh, okay.
They sued, and in a class action lawsuit, they sued the Housing Authority and they sued HUD, which was the regulatory agency, to challenge this practice because it was only being enforced in communities of color, predominantly Black communities. And so it went to federal court, and ultimately the case was settled. And there was a consent decree entered into, a voluntary compliance agreement entered into, and I was by that time I had come on board as general counsel, so I was responsible for implementing the voluntary compliance agreement and the consent decree. So I had a lot of trips to Washington, a whole lot of exposure to the way that works. And
did they stop that practice? They don't do.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, that's
absolutely.
crazy.
Oh, you can't imagine how crazy it was. It was beyond. It was beyond crazy, but it just also shows you what happens when people don't think there's any accountability for dealing with poor people in any kind of way they want. And he had gotten away with it for a long time. And his last name was Sartini.
He was
the executive director. Mm-hmm.
Did they find they were doing that all across the country, or was it just Nevada that
no,
they were?
I don't know. No, there were other instances across the country, but not as extensive as this one was. Mm-hmm. There were little, what we found in little rural communities, there was a lot of misappropriation of resources and treatment of people. But Las Vegas, that situation was probably, it really kind of put us on the map as far as, housing authorities were concerned, because nobody had ever even thought about doing anything that ridiculous.
They thought nobody probably would say anything.
Exactly.
And they might just think, oh, well, this is probably normal.
Exactly.
And they do this to everybody.
Exactly.
And no one would say.
It was a group of women, very strong-willed and determined women, led by a woman by the name of Beatrice Turner.
I know.
And a number of other women whose names escape me now. But
probably Katie Duncan was part of that.
No, Katie never lived
No?
never lived in housing authority properties. But it was all the women that ended up in the lawsuit were residents of public housing, not Section 8, not senior, but of public housing. So they were all what we call the family communities where, so it was quite an experience. And that's why I talk so much about this whole interconnectedness of government, because when you're working in an environment like that, you get to see how if everybody does their part, it actually can work. You know what I mean? But I can't do what you're supposed to do, and you can't do what I'm supposed to do, but we are supposed to work together and be connected in that way and be accountable to each other.
Congress should work like that.
Yeah, but I don't know what's happened. There's a huge, with all this connectivity that we have, I think it's very interesting. We were talking, you can't move for your device. I'll know what you do on, you know what I mean? I can follow you on Facebook and find out what you do. But for some reason, with all this, we are more disconnected in terms of purpose than we've ever been, I think, and accountability. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know. And I think that's where, and the people that are impacted, they know that you're not doing it the right way. It's just that their voice, people don't listen to it all the time. I think there's going to come a time when you're not going to have a choice, because I think they're going to get so frustrated. And I've seen that when, because when you don't have anything else to lose.
Right.
So get out there and make it happen.
So you were in housing, and what else?
So then,
what made you run? to
So let
to
me tell you.
become a
So
judge?
so one of the things that happened at the housing authority, the executive director at the time, who was just a brilliant man, Frederick Brown, had a heart attack, died, had a very massive heart attack, died. It was kind of our board was kind of, a little here, a little there. You just don't know what's going on. And at that time, there was a vacancy on the Justice Court bench. And I had been
What year was this?
approached. That was in 2002. And I had been approached about considering a judgeship. And so I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it. And, as a lawyer, that's one of your aspirations. At least for me, it was, to become a judge after you practice for so long, that's kind of the next step.
Progression.
And so there was a vacancy, and it would be an initial 2-year appointment and then followed by, running for office. And I had to give it a lot of thought, but at the end of the day, I really felt like I could make a difference. Because at that time, there were no judges of color on the bench, particularly in Justice Court.
You're the
I'd
first.
always been, I'm not the first. I'm not the first Black person to be on that bench, though.
Woman.
Robert Reed, but woman,
Yes.
yeah.
I background you.
Yeah. So
Not that I had to background you, but I did it just for a refresher's course.
Yeah. So I really thought, and I thought, unlike district court, justice court still has the touch of the people. You can still kind of intervene and, kind of connect the dots, and hopefully the person learns from the experience and doesn't come back. And so I decided, to put my hat in the ring, and I had a lot of support. The community really
against?
support. My first time I ran, to be honest with you, I don't even remember. I'm
It was what, 23
think.
years ago?
Yeah, I don't even
That
remember.
might have been in your research.
You know what? You know who ran against me? No, and I'll
Wasn't it
tell you
what
who
you
ran
said?
against me. The guy, his last name was Goobler.
Oh.
And he was just, everybody was so
Jim Goobler.
mad. Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't even know his first
Jim
name.
Goobler.
Yeah,
Yes.
everybody down there was so mad that I had got
Hair
the
Master
appointment.
Jim Goobler.
Right.
Yeah.
Is he? I don't even know that.
Hair Master, yeah.
Yeah, I know he's got it's a long time family.
He doesn't
here.
like me for some reason.
I can't imagine.
I can't imagine why.
I know, right? Yeah, so everybody, they were all so angry that I had been appointed to that position. And so they used to have these little meetings with the judges and the whoever and the whatever. And
The
they
county
all
commission
decided,
appointed you, right?
And they all decided that they were going to put their candidate up against me.
Who was on the commission back then?
Well, the person who put
Push.
forth my nomination
Bill
was
Terry?
Yvonne Gates.
Oh, Yvonne Atkinson Gates.
It was
yeah.
Yvonne Atkinson Gates, but
Yeah.
at that time it was Dario and Aaron Kinney and Mary.
The crew.
The whole crew.
The crew.
The crew. All of whom were
The G-String crew.
absolutely.
Yeah, right.
And you can
Bruce
say that. But
Woodbury.
they were, yes.
But he
all-
wasn't part of the G-String thing.
No, he was not.
No.
He was not. And they were an incredible group of people to me. And I will forever be grateful to them because they kind of afforded me the opportunity. But so that's what happened, and that's who ran against me and didn't work. And so.
But after that, I think you ran unopposed after that. No?
I always had an opponent.
Really?
They were always going to
They
come
always
for
got
me.
it for you.
Mhm,
You're called
always.
a trailblazing judge.
So they say, I know. Just because I want to be fair. And that's something that wasn't happening. So, yeah. So that's the story.
Because you're involved in
And
the
I'm
community.
a preacher's kid. So
preacher's kid.
yeah, preacher's kid. My dad was
Boy,
a
you must
Methodist
have been real
minister here.
disciplined then.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that's why I'm as community minded as I am. So
Because they call you a compassionate judge when you did your sentencing.
oh, well, I'm glad to hear that.
How does that
I
make
hope-
you feel? How do you believe that you applied the law justly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I do. I think that, first of all, there's a lot of, there is definitely a need for the court system. There's definitely a need for systems in general because we need order in our lives. But I think that case evaluation is something that our community really could benefit greatly from. So when you look at the large caseloads that Justice Court has, and you see them, I mean, the numbers, they're there, every docket's got. But if you start to go through and see what those cases are, you will see that a lot of the people, particularly as I call the frequent flyer, are people who are really, their behavior is symptomatic of poverty. So if you can, and this is why I think they do that as an offhanded compliment or whatever they're saying about the compassion. But I always understood that if you get to the reason for the behavior, and if you can address the reason, then the behavior probably won't reoccur. So things like, I don't have services, so I'm stealing, or I broke into somebody's house, or I'm trespassing because, whatever. I had one of the people who taught me the most, Mr. Arbery, who my first few months on the bench, I saw him repeat it. No. I think they may be related. He was, you're talking about Morse. Yes. And this gentleman was a person who got charged with assault and battery almost every month.
Every month.
And let me tell you what, so he came to me when I first got on the bench, and I'm like, okay, listen, we got to figure this out, blah, blah, blah. I need to calm down. And so after I saw him maybe 2 or 3 times, I'm like, Mr. Arbery, what is going on? You keep coming in here and, you're fighting and it's the same people. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out that his aunt was his payee for his Social Security.
Oh boy.
And so the first of the month, he was going to get his money. He's supposed to be living with her and all the things, but she was keeping his money, and he was acting out because he wanted his money. He didn't have. So we were able, when I say we, my staff, we were able to work with Social Security disability. They changed the payee status. He's now in a group home. He works on the janitorial staff for community college. He's doing fine. He's never come back to court that I'm aware of. And the whole thing was this woman was taking his money.
Everyone's money.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just think you have to ask questions below, kind of get to the root. Because people now some people wake up in the morning and say, I'm just going to be crazy, but most people don't. You know what I mean? Most people don't. Most people
we know some of those kind of people.
Right. Most people are pushed or provoked by something. Mm-hmm. And if you can figure that out. So, but what was amazing to me is when you start to reach out to these agencies, which goes back to this whole interconnectedness, they responded because you got a judge calling. But the everyday recipient wasn't able to get access to the things that they really should be getting access to. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So we kind of took some time in court to try and kind of piece that together for people. So I think, and I'm proud of that because I think that's what I was there to do.
You were involved in the community. They called you a community involvement judge. And what part of the community were you involved with?
I was present just about in every community, to be quite honest with you. But my focal point,
on veterans in politics.
but my focal point was the West Side. That's the community I grew up in, and I remember attending. I attended a function where Senator Bryan was speaking.
He was on here.
Like a month ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he really is, he said something then that has never left me. And he criticized judges at this thing. And yeah, he did. And he said, because you use this whole notion of, I can't talk about the case. I can't, you use that as an excuse for not being present in the community. One doesn't really have anything to do with the other. I can't tell you how I'm going to rule on a specific case, but I can talk to you about the judicial system. I can talk to you. I should be available to answer
You
questions.
can leave names out.
Exactly. I don't even, but
Mhm.
I don't even have to talk about a specific case
Mhm.
because the system itself is so foreign, even to the people who come to it.
Mhm.
And it's a shame because, and that's his whole point. People should not be afraid to come to court. I mean, I know there's some hysteria and all that, but there should be a certain dignity that you receive no matter what the outcome is.
Mhm.
And that was his whole point. And he criticized the fact that judges just really were very absent after election, gone, never, they don't go to anything. And so I always said, if I became a judge, I wanted to be present. And so that's that.
More
sorry.
judges need, I was just going to talk about being in the community and maybe doing events, and because nobody knows the judges.
And it's a shame because, you should know.
Mhm.
They don't. I get a call. He gets a ton of calls. A lot of people get calls that are involved in politics because no one knows anything about them. They may see a name that sounds familiar, that's been around for a long time, and yeah, I'll vote for them. But they could be the worst judge ever. And so we like shows like this where we have candidates on, judicial candidates, and where people can listen and hear, and then also come to events. I think that it's really good that judges, like yourself, do things like that to get in the community and have people get to know you.
And we need to get to know them.
Right.
Because, one of the things that I noticed, and that, not to say that I'm perfect, but one of the things I noticed, a lot of these judges, at least in justice court, my experience, and district court, their life experience and their exposure to other people is very limited. And that's dangerous to have somebody presiding over a case and they see you as other than, or, somebody to be afraid of. Or
so they stay in their
community,
in their bubble,
and their little,
and not get out to the rest of the
and they need that exposure as much as the public needs to be exposed. They need to be exposed to know that, there are people that live differently than you. There are people who have challenges that you may not be familiar with, but you kind of need to get familiar. I always used to say people need to be culturally competent. And I believe that needs to be a requirement of any public servant, period. Whether you're at the DMV, taking numbers, or if you're at, I don't care what. Yeah, I mean, you need to know. I mean, you need to be culturally competent so that you can extend some compassion and some grace and some understanding to people because their situation is not so foreign to you. I would see I'd see judges who were frustrated, like they didn't wait on interpreters. Well, if the person doesn't speak English, how are you going to communicate?
Exactly.
Or there would be people coming over from the jail. I'll never forget this. This was something new to me. There are gentlemen who he could write, but he could not hear. So he was coming over from the jail. He had been detained. And, the officers never told me he was deaf. I had to find it out on my own. And I'm like, well, I could have called somebody to come in here. I don't know sign language. You know what I mean? I don't, but you need to know that that's important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is not just do 20 days. I'll see you,
Do 20 days.
I mean, it's just not, and it is amazing to me how little regard people give for other people when they're different.
Yes.
And so I saw a lot of that. And I think it does everybody a disservice, including the person who's sitting on the bench. I think if you don't know and you haven't been exposed, you have an obligation to get out there and find out,
How long were you on the bench for, by the way?
20 years, right? 02 to
22? Yeah.
How come you never ran for district?
Oh, God, no.
Come on, you saw what
My
Abby
person-
Silver did.
I did, and I appreciate that. Abby and I went to school together. I think it's great for her to go to every court. That's
She's the only one,
astounding.
too.
She's the only one to do it. There's a reason for that. No,
Let tell.
No. I think
after the show.
that Abby is so smart and so ambitious, and that's what she wanted to do, and so that's what she did. For me, I don't think I would do well in district court. I need more hands-on, and I need to be able to know that when you leave, I've really been able to change the trajectory of what's happening. And when you get in district court, you're more and more withdrawn from all of that.
You never thought about DA's office either?
No. I never thought about, I think about the DA's office, but in a different way. I don't think about it in terms of me running, no.
How do you think about it then?
I think that it needs to be overhauled. I think that case evaluation really matters. I think that statistics and profiling of cases really matters. And I think that there needs to be more attention given to that part of the process. We have an extraordinary approval rate of cases that come over from police department to the DA's office. And that's different than what you see in other cities of our size.
When you say profiling, what do you mean by that?
I mean, so we don't always, we do things based on task forces. So, okay, the feds are giving out money for car theft, so we're going to create the Viper task force, and so we're going to load it up with all these detectives and all these people, and so we're going to have a bunch of car
thieves come in,
right? Yeah, because that's where the money
we'll push
is.
those cases.
We'll push those We'll push those
I
cases, or we'll and I think in case evaluation, there's something to be said about and this is, don't come for me. I know that there's a huge uptick in domestic violence and child abuse and all of those things. But sometimes you really have to look, everything doesn't check the box. Everything just cannot check the box. And you need somebody to assess in real time what's going on. But let me tell you what's happening though. And I will say this to be fair. There's a whole lot of talk always about law and order and about, we need more police officers and we need more, security here and there. And maybe we do, I don't know. But when you do that, that creates the stage for, then you need to expand your justice system as well. And that also means that you may need different types of people involved than you had even 20 years ago, because there's different types of crime now. There's all this cyber stuff going on now. There's all kinds. So in order to be attractive to candidates to come and work, because you want the best, right? You want the best. That means you're going to have to start to really value experience and education, and you're going to have to recruit. I know as a native of Las Vegas, I always hear this all the time. These people coming in here from out of state and they're doing all this stuff. And that's true. And it's unfortunate. But if we need to recruit from out of state to make our system better, I just think we need to do that. And so that's what I mean. I mean, and it's not just the DAs, it's the whole.
About the PD's office.
The PD's office is the same. I mean, it's gotten better than it was when they were
Phil Cone.
No, before Phil Cone. there was a massive lawsuit again. That seems to be what triggers change, right? So you had this massive lawsuit against the county, where this gentleman he had been charged with, I think he was charged with murder or sex assault, something very serious, and had never talked to his lawyer. And, just like a whole number of reckless disregard.
How do you get charged with that and don't speak to your
lawyer?
Well,
I don't know. Ask them, because that's and they kind of had this Mormon club in the PD's office. Morgan Harris was
I've
the
heard of
public.
that.
We've
right.
heard of that
I heard there's
quite a
a
bit.
Mormon mafia in this town. Is that
Yeah,
true? Do you
well,
know anything about
I
that?
don't know. I don't know. I mean, I've heard.
We'll
all
ask
that.
her after.
I've
She's
heard
not
all
going to
that.
say it here.
But it changed. It started to change, and this is interesting. So it starts to change, and Phil Combe becomes the public defender. And I think in some ways Phil was very good for the office because he started to recruit beyond. He went out and got really good, talented, up and coming lawyers and, young lawyers who went through a lot of training and just raised the bar, in my opinion. But then you've got county management. This is, well, wait a minute now. I had someone in county management tell me, you want these people to get Cadillac service, and we're only willing to pay for Chevrolet. So what happens, again, back to that interconnectedness, now I cut your budget, I do this, I do that. So your effectiveness is dwindling by the minute, right? Because as a manager, I don't value what you do, so I'm going to cut your money. Same thing with the DA's office. I don't value what you do because I'd rather put it at the airport or I'd rather put it out at the strip corridor.
So the county commission holds a purse string.
The purse string, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there's this tug of war, which I've never understood. But again, we were talking about the ways in which government disconnects. You have judges that think that they shouldn't have to abide by anything that the county says and does. But the county is writing the checks.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So at some point, everybody got to come together and work it out, right? Mm-hmm. And so you get into this tug of war. Well, we just won't fund it, or we'll just take it away. And what loses is structure and policy and progression, because if I'm in the DA's office, I can't hire more DAs, or even though I've got a shit ton of cases coming in, and I can't hire more PDs because, you guys have cut this and cut that. And so then what? And what is also interesting, and this is why I am so grateful that I had the experience I had with the Housing Authority. People in those positions, DA, public defender, not so much with Wolfson, because I know he had experience as a city council person for a while dealing with that, but they typically don't have backgrounds in how to navigate that level of bureaucracy and how to deal with it. So they just kind of shrink back. You know what I mean? And again, the people lose. Mm-hmm. But it's all because we're very disconnected. We're very, very disconnected. And I don't know, and it hasn't always been that way, but I think the larger we're becoming, we're in the middle of a major shift. I think we're finally becoming a city. And with that, the good old boy, small town way of doing things is in danger.
Yeah, you could tell. Sorry, you could tell by the amount of women that are taking over the judiciary on the bench.
Yeah, that's interesting too, and I don't even know why that is.
People trust women more. They just come across more trustworthy, I believe. I've heard that a lot. Yeah,
and that's unfortunate because you can't make that assumption. Believe you me.
Do you think that the good old boy club will ever disappear in Nevada? I can't imagine that it ever will.
I think it evolves. I think it is evolving.
Is the mob still here?
Oh, the mob is probably everywhere. The mob is in DC. I mean, that's, it's just a matter of what that looks like now. It's not Bugsy Siegel anymore.
It's CFO,
it's PayPal and all that. So I don't know. I mean, it's different though. It's a much more sophisticated thing, is my point. I mean, it's just it's much. So you're always going to have that sector, that behind the throne kind of person who's pushing the buttons. I mean, I think you're always going to have that. as long as you have humans, I think, I think you're always going to have that.
So what do you think about the current PD and the current DA? Since you're retired.
Well, I would tell you that whether I was retired or not. So let's start with the public defender because she's relatively new, and I always admired her as an attorney. I'm concerned because I think she's I know she's a phenomenal attorney by, all stretches of the imagination. She did some pretty remarkable work, and I was able to witness it. So I think she's very capable. As an administrator, I don't know because again, she's never had that experience.
Right.
So to get in there and navigate with career administrators at the county management level is going to be daunting, and it's going to take her some time to get acclimated.
Right.
And then I don't even know if she does get acclimated, if that's going to be enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Because Phil was there for a minute.
Yeah, Phil was there. And I think toward the end, Phil kind of started learning. It takes you a while to get, okay, this county manager wants this and this one. It's just so I have concern in that way. I think she's phenomenal, but as an administrator, I think with the district attorney, if I can be, I was very disappointed.
How so?
I was disappointed because I think most people thought that when he first ran, and when I say most, let me just say I thought.
The point appointed or when he first ran?
When he first came on board. Because he was outside of the office, because it had always been an internal,
right.
Move up the ladder. Mm-hmm. So I think I thought, and people that I know thought, that he would change the tone of the office. And when I say that, I don't mean let everybody go free like they say I say, but I thought there would be much more intense evaluation of cases, not as much overcharging as we're famous for.
What do you mean by overcharge? Well, putting on more.
So yeah,
crime.
You break into a house and now you're charged. Okay, you got
abusing the elderly
and robbery and
got
burglary
it.
and looking the wrong way and saying the wrong thing.
But aren't they all crimes?
They are all crimes. But then
why not charge them?
Because when you get to court, the first thing you do is take a deal. Plead him down to a misdemeanor, breaking and entering, or whatever you're going to do, and call it a day. He does 60 days in jail, and you get to go out here and be performative, which is something I have a problem with, and talk about how you are eradicating crime when you are really just dealing cases, and you're hiking up charges so people take deals. Does that make you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not because you believe that this criminal conduct needs to be pursued. Mm-hmm. Okay, most of those cases that I saw were pled down to misdemeanors. The vast majority. You can get out here and talk about how your numbers, they're going to sound very impressive. 1,300 in a week, 20,000 out here, blah blah blah. And when they get down there, they cut a deal. They plead, they get credit for time served, or they do whatever, and they go on their business.
What about the ones that he was light on? Didn't charge what he should have. Not, in my opinion, the kids, the whole gang of kids that beat and killed the high school kid, Jonathan. What was his last name?
About that.
What was his last name?
I forget.
The whole gang of.
I know who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
School.
And and the ones I believe he was charging them.
Supposed to charge them as adults.
They were charged as adults, and then I guess it backed down to minors. They got out and get to finish high school, and away they go. In those types of cases, to me, that is
that sounds like I don't know because I don't know, but I can tell you that with that certification, Nevada is way up there in the national average of juvenile certifications. So if they backed down, it wasn't because they wanted to. There must have been a reason, in terms of the conduct or in terms of the history of those kids that resulted in them going back to juvenile as opposed to being certified as adults. That's what you're saying, right? They were supposed to be certified, but then it got turned around. The Supreme Court turned it around and put it back in juvenile court.
I think I don't know if it was Supreme Court. I think he made that decision.
I think the DA made that decision.
And the mom of the one that was deceased was, I would be
I don't
furious.
know. I can only say, knowing that office, at least my experience, let me say this, my experience with that office has been, they are very punitive. So if they backed off of anything, it wasn't because they wanted to. But I don't know, because I don't know the case. So
how do you feel about the current sheriff? Because I know you had to have.
I don't really have much to. I haven't had any real contact with him. Oh. I don't know. I'm sure he's a very lovely man, but I haven't had much contact with him.
You've been there 22 years. You've made chief judge, right? Mm-hmm. How many times?
Twice.
Mm-hmm. How many different specialty courts you sat on? Or you
don't get me started with that.
Did you work on Fridays?
Yeah.
Did you work Fridays or have an admin day on Friday?
When we during COVID, I think, is that when we went to the 4-day a week?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
That's when it started.
Is that when it started?
Yeah.
Yeah, and after that, I didn't.
Was that an admin day for you that you could work from home?
No, it was just a day that I didn't go to work because we worked 4 days a week. So
there were 10.
Yeah, so you work just like every other public agency now is, Monday through Thursday. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it wasn't. No, I wasn't trying to create the illusion that I was somewhere working. I was not.
She's one of them straight up judges.
I was not. But I was there Monday through Thursday, and I did what I was supposed to do. One of the things that I will say about that too, which goes back to this notion of interconnectedness and how important it is to understand the county's relationship to the courts and all the things, is because, especially in a court like justice court or a court like municipal court, it's not really the judges that are doing the bulk of the work. It is when you have that level of volume, you have to have a very strong clerical staff. Mm-hmm. And those men and women down there work extremely hard, but are very devalued. And so what happens is there's constant turnover, because as soon as I can go somewhere and get a better job, and the value has never really been understood, I don't think, even amongst, say, our funders like the county. And so there's very little room to even expand upon those. Like those positions are typecast almost. And it's almost like bare minimum, So if you start requesting more qualifications, even though the demand for higher qualifications is there. I mean, anytime you automate, and now you got to have somebody that's got IT experience, somebody that understands, grammar, how to write, how to do things. So you're expecting this highly skilled person to work for this little bit of money. And so you have a very dissatisfied workforce. So some of them are down there on Fridays pushing, making sure that paperwork gets through. Like you were talking about, you got your paperwork in 2 weeks because somebody was back there processing that paperwork. And the same thing happens with landlord-tenant things. And the same thing happens with criminal cases. I got to get all my paperwork to wherever it's got to go. You know what I mean? So that people, it's a matter of record,
Do you think that the overload of cases, and you're trying to, turn them quickly and get through these, do you think that sometimes things fall through the cracks, or people are not given the time and attention to that case that they should, because you have so many cases and you're trying to get through these?
I think what now? I'm sorry.
Do you think that some of this stuff falls through the cracks, or the community is not getting the attention on some of these because you're trying to hurry through the cases because you have such a backlog of cases. I know there's, tons of judges, especially family court, has such a backlog. So that need to get through those cases.
I think family court is its own special
person
entity that probably could benefit from almost a 24-hour processing unit, if that makes any sense. I mean, it's large enough and it impacts enough across the board, and it's not just divorces and it's not just child custody, it's delinquency, it's foster care, it's all the things that have been, it's probate, it's all the things that have gone in there. But again, where you spend your money, I'll show you where your value is. You know what I mean? So you've got to have a mandate that says we want a really strong, progressive, we want, this is the kind of court system that we want. I think it's a misnomer. I'm not going to say this for family court because I always tell them I think they deserve combat pay down there. But for in justice court, in justice court in particular, and probably in municipal court, what we call the limited jurisdiction courts, I don't necessarily think we have an overload of cases. I know a lot of people like to say that, and we have high numbers. But again, if you were able to go through it, how many of them, I mean, we're not dealing with racketeering and RICO, we're not dealing with tax evasion and, white collar crime that really is taking, all your brain power to kind of figure out, okay, this is not, it's fairly straightforward.
So you can move through them.
You can move, I can move through them. But the backup, all the things that have to happen because of what I do in court. See, nobody really wants to talk about that. Like,
it's a lot of paperwork.
Right. It's all that paperwork. It's got to go. It's got to be registered with different entities. If you hold a license, I've got to notify DMV. If you got a CDL, I got to notify, all this stuff. I'm not doing that.
Right.
You see, so somebody's got to do that. And then you go and you look, and it's kind of like pull back that curtain. It's like the little wizard just sitting there,
typing.
You're right. Exactly. Exactly. That's where I'd like to see more support. Not with it was a very good job. We're very well paid. It's fine. You know what I mean? It takes a little longer sometimes when you're taking your time in court. But again, because it's not long because of me, it's long because my staff is under a union agreement that says they get off at 3:00. So that means I got to give them their
really?
Well, I don't know, not 3, but you know what I mean. I've got to give them their 2 breaks. I've got to give them their lunch,
their smoke
and
break.
then I've got to deal with the public who's got to get back to work, who's got to childcare issues, who's doing so.
Don't forget those attorneys.
But if you invest more in the administration component, then it won't be so lopsided. That's what I think.
So, 22 years. How many high-profile cases were you on?
I have no idea. You know what? I have no idea because, again, I practiced the entire time that I was on the bench. I did not read the Review Journal. I did not look at Channel 8 News. I did not do anything local in terms of news because there was so much negativity around my appointment that I learned, and I didn't want it to impact my disposition on the bench. So it's better for me not to know what you're saying about me. So I'm not, so I can have a pleasant disposition. Yeah. Right. So I can have a pleasant disposition. So in terms of high profile, I don't know. There was always cameras and stuff in there. Was one of them you had. Robert Tellis was assigned to me, but for some, what's his name?
Who? Tell me and I'll tell you.
The judge that sat in for me. I broke my foot during that time. The judge that
Zimmerman used to sit in for you.
No.
No, she never sat in?
She would never sit in for me. What's his former FBI? I cannot think of
Oh,
his name.
Jansen.
Judge Jansen sat for me.
Why is he still doing that? He lost his election.
He's got a lot of experience, and he's a substitute judge, and like I broke my foot, so the day
Were you kicking some butt?
no, I was playing with my dogs in the backyard. But anyway, the gentleman who was killed apparently was a good friend of Judge Jansen, and Judge Jansen had been a FBI agent, and this man had helped him. And anyway, he made some kind of remark on the record, I think, about you should be ashamed of yourself. Something. It looked as if he was going to be biased toward Mr. Tellis because of the relationship he had with the deceased. So I recused because of that. So that's what happened.
What about that social media case? Weren't you on the social media case?
Which one?
It doesn't say exactly which one, but something dealing with free speech rights, public safety.
I got that all the time.
Digital age.
Was this the
thing.
guy that wanted to assassinate Governor Sisolak, or was this?
It says social media threats case in 2020. Judge Bennett-Haron dismissed 2 of 3 charges against the man.
That's probably him.
Accused. Oh, was it that one?
He's dead now, right?
Who?
That guy
Which
that attacked or that you're talking about against Sisolak.
Oh,
Isn't
yeah,
that the
yeah,
guy?
yeah.
I think he was doing.
Oh, you
they
had
said
that
it was threats.
one. I know who that is.
I think I can't remember
Yeah,
what the actual accusations were, but
Okay.
we had a.
Okay.
I dismissed.
What's his name? Jason something.
I can't think of his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. He put a gun to his head, and that wasn't.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? I'm not surprised. I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised because it was clearly.
My God, you really don't read the paper, huh? How about all right? Since we brought up the paper, how do you feel about the? I don't know if the Review Journal don't do it anymore. When they did the judging the judges, how do you feel about it? I thought that whole thing was biased. My only.
It was just a time for, and most people didn't participate in it, and the questioning and most of the comments, you could tell. I always got low scores because they didn't like me, so they'd say she's biased in favor of young people, old people, and Black people. And then but there was never any specific
case.
Nothing that I had done wrong, nothing that I had, gotten wrong. Yeah, I mean, it was just a time for them to be able to vent. You know what I mean?
I just read that article. Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought of it.
Yeah, I mean, and they get to do that. It's fine, but I ain't got to give it any energy. You know what I mean? So that's what happened.
In the 22 years you sat on that bench, what case just came to mind that you just had problems sleeping at night?
A few of them, but there's a young man who I'm very proud of, and he was 14 when he came to me.
Wow.
On a murder case. He was represented by
Bill Terry?
No, he was represented by Bucky Buchanan.
Oh, Bucky.
And they were gonna have him sign, I still can see him now, sign a plea agreement in my court where he agreed to life imprisonment.
Jesus.
And
that's 25 years.
This is like not getting ready to happen in here. I just cannot like that. Never. It's 14. Yeah, 14. And then and the case itself was kind of murky. It happened in the back of in a schoolyard at midnight. There was a poker game with a whole bunch of people there. Nobody saw it was one of those. Anyway, he did end up taking a plea deal, but not for life. I think he ended up doing 10 years in prison, but he speaks 5 languages. He has his degree now. He has a real estate investing company. He does interpreting for different corporations. He did almost the whole 10. Yeah.
Do you think
Almost
a
72.
child's brain is not
I
fully
don't think
developed?
it was fully developed. I don't even think he did what they said he
Oh.
did, but that's me. Now I
Right.
don't,
Right.
but I think he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it was just, he shouldn't have been out at that kind of time, doing those kind of things, and
What was his parents?
well,
Yeah.
there's
Were
always
they in the
that.
courtroom?
That was
for him?
probably that was probably an underlying issue of
That his mother was there. His mother was there. And, she's very supportive of him. She was very supportive of him. I just don't know how much, hindsight is always 20/20. You don't know how much control people have over their kids, I was raised in a fairly strict
By
home.
preacher.
Right.
Yeah.
At 14, I can't even imagine going anywhere my dad didn't know
Yeah.
anything about.
Yeah.
But then that's,
Mhm.
that was my experience. But but he is doing remarkably well now. So I'm very happy to see that. Mr. Arbery that I tell you about just had a huge impact on making me kind of dig deeper. That kind of prompted me to ask those kind of questions of everybody, because if it was happening with him, it's probably happening a lot more. And that's true. So those two, it's interesting because in Las Vegas, especially with the Review Journal, my experience with them, they came in there on almost everything. They were in there taking pictures.
They were hunting you down.
I don't know that they were hunting me down. I think they were just looking for stories,
They find you exciting?
No, not me, but I think just the nature of criminal cases and the allegations, especially when they're first charged, they sound really, and then as it dwindles, you see what's really going on.
So what judges that are in the justice of the peace in your 22-year don't give me names if you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
that you say to yourself, man, they should not be on that bench. Anybody come to mind?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sad. It's sad. It's just sad. But again, it goes back to people vote for who they like. I heard this one woman who was running for judge, and she said, I just want you guys to know that I just love you. I just love you. And I'm thinking, what? Love is an action word, and it should be shown based on how you deal with cases, right? If you value their humanity, if you really see that, and it doesn't show up in that. It hasn't shown up. There are judges who will tell you, I just do whatever the state says. That's not a good judge. There are people who are deliberately culturally insensitive. That's not a good judge. And there are people who really do believe in their heart of hearts that they're different from the people who come before them.
What does that mean?
That means different, better than.
they're above that.
They're entitled. Oh, yeah. Boy.
And even though I may be drinking and driving, you can't drink and drive. You know what I mean?
They're hypocrites.
So they're right, very much so. Very, very, very much so. It's amazing how they reconcile.
How does it make you feel being a judge and you know that these people out there are making decisions that's gonna?
Well, it makes me. It makes what it got to a point, and especially during COVID, I think it really manifested for me. That as much as I was thinking I was making an impact, I really wasn't making the impact I wanted to make, and I had to make a decision as to whether I wanted to continue to be complicit in that, because there were more of them than there was of me. And so for my own sanity, and I had to do a reset, because it was pretty amazing.
Any of them you wanted to pull off your earrings, drop off your high heels, and knock them out?
Oh, absolutely. 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 Mm-hmm.
How do you do it? How do you maintain your composure?
You have to do a lot of praying. a lot of praying, a lot of walking away. I have a really solid, strong, close-knit group of friends and family that I can always talk to. I have an uncle who was a judge in Atlanta for almost 30 years. So I can always call him and complain and vent. And he would give me some very good advice because he's much more even keeled than I am.
I'm going to ask,
mhm.
I'm going to ask you this question because
Okay.
I think that you're probably one of the only few that could answer.
Okay.
And I think that you're probably the only one of the few that will actually give me an answer.
Okay.
Do you think any of the judges in your 22 years on the bench that was racist?
Yes. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think there's degrees of that. And I think, and I'm very careful about using that word because I think there's a difference between being biased or prejudiced and then being racist. And I think racism comes in when you use the system to carry out your biases as opposed to just holding your own, because we all have them. I mean, everybody's got their own. I like vanilla ice cream. I don't like strawberry. You know what I mean?
Crazy woman.
You know, whatever, whatever your thing, everybody's got something. We all have it. The question is, can you kind of compartmentalize it and look at whoever's standing in front of you and not carry that into it? And, Judge Maupin, Bill Maupin, who was on the Supreme Court and who was very kind to me all the time, said you really have to look at what life experiences a person brings to the bench.
Mm-hmm. Are they still there?
Mm-mm.
They're not on the bench, the ones you talked about.
Oh, well, let's see. Okay, one just retired. Let's see. One.
My goodness. She's got to count.
I'm going to say about 3 of them right now.
Are still there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that maybe we should have some lunch and we need to have a conversation. Would you do that with me?
Sure.
What is next for you now that you've retired, and what are you going to do now?
Living life
Supreme
like it's
Court,
golden. No, I'm not thinking at all about any court stuff. I'm okay. My entire life, and I mean, I've been working since I was 11. My father was very active in the community, which meant so was I. My entire life has been pretty much one step in front of the other. Do this, this is it, plan A, then there's B, then there's C. This is the first time in my 63 years of life that I can.
How old are you?
63.
You look good. Don't you look
No,
good?
she doesn't look crazy at all.
I kind of get to just figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just kind of take some time to rest and restore, because my cup wasn't running over anymore. It had gotten pretty empty. And when you say, you were laughing, but I was serious. When I realized that I could possibly catch a case down there if I wasn't careful, my temper was going to really just overcome me, I knew then that it was time.
There's time to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The minute you want to put hands on somebody, I gotta go.
It's time. Because at that point they've gotten on the inside of you, and that's dangerous.
It's not worth it.
Mm-hmm. It's not worth it. And it wasn't going to further anything. And it was, in fact, from COVID on, I think it receded. Any progress that was being made was just slowly rolling back. And people were unkind and self-centered and very absorbed. And I don't even know, I mean, there was, it was just crazy stuff going on. You saw that crazy corridor court they came up with.
Which one?
The one where all the people, if you got picked up on the strip, then you'd go to I think it was Saragossa who was presiding over that.
Was
all
the
cases.
The homeless one?
Well, it's not supposed to be. It was supposed to be all criminal activity within the strip corridor. Right. They ban you and they do. There's just a lot.
Isn't that a civil rights violation?
There's a lot of violations. So, I mean, and to say that a court stands willing to do that and goes and meets with property owners and say you're not biased to carry out, and don't get me wrong, I understand business. I understand we can't have a whole lot of vagrancy around our primary industry for this state, but I think there has to be a balance, and that only comes from understanding both sides. And that's what a judge is supposed to be able to do. And anytime you start flipping that over, you destroy the very system you say you want to be a part of.
Are there some laws that you just shake your head and like, I have to do it, but I really...
You know what? No, and I'll tell you why. Because I always understood that the law is liquid, and a lot of times, it's the way it's being enforced is the problem, not the actual law.
Gotcha.
You know?
Could you give us an example?
So, no tail light. Now, you're not supposed. Your tail light's supposed to be working. It's cracked. If I'm a cop, I can stop you and say, Mr. Sampson, your tail light is out and you got to do it. But if I want to use it as an investigative tool in certain communities, pull you over, pull you out, search your car, call your name, run your warrant, because I don't like you.
That happened to me.
Two different ways, both legal. Mm-hmm. Right.
Cost Metro $20,000.
Right, right. Cost taxpayers because Metro ain't paying nothing.
Mm-hmm. It is the taxpayers.
Right. It's taxpayers' money.
That's right.
Civil rights violation.
Right. Mm-hmm. But if I want to use it as an investigative tool, and I live in a community where it was used like that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now, not only do you have a hostile relationship with the people that are supposed to be there to protect and serve, but now, paying out money, doing all these things, and it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know their rights,
And a lot of people feel like they shouldn't have them because, because of what's been drained in their head. Yeah. But as a law enforcement person, or as an officer of the court, or as a judge, I should know that those two modes of conduct exist. Mm-hmm. And so now I need to find out, go in the middle and say, okay, wait a minute. Did you have probable cause to stop them? And if you did, what'd you find? Or did you do a good search, or was it a bad search? I need to be able to answer all those questions. And that's why, no, I don't have a law that I'm mad at. I just look at how it's being enforced.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You have anything else for Karen?
No.
Well, this has been a very interesting conversation.
Yes,
I wish this is the first time you've been on the show.
I know. I don't do these things, but you asked me and I told you I'd be here, so I'm here.
And we really appreciate it to get another look, a different set of eyes, another understand how the law works.
I mean, there's a lot. There are a lot. I don't. I do want you to know there are a lot of people. And I can only speak for Justice Court, but in Las Vegas Justice Court and in North Las Vegas Justice Court that are really working very hard to try and really get back to it being a people's court and to really putting in place some parameters to address some of the things that come about. But there are also people who are in positions of power in those courts and in those administrations that don't like the people that we're paid to serve. And I think those people are problematic. Yes. And I always have. Because if you don't like them, you shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
Well, Karen, Mark's going to zoom in on you. You have the final say. You can say whatever you want.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a great meeting you.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. You're going to be involved in this election coming up?
What election? The 2025? 26. Oh, I don't know.
All the district court judges?
Oh, no.
We'll call you.
We'll call you anyway. Get her involved.
She could be a moderator.
Yeah. Would you be a moderator?
For endorsement?
Yeah, sure. Sure.
She'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She'd be like, hey, go shut up and sit down.
Yeah, your time's up. Next.
Time's up.
Next question.
No, I won't. This is gonna be it's gonna be interesting. 2026.
Because you still live here.
I still live here, and I still
You got family here?
Yep, I still
Kids?
I had no children here. We've got A daughter in San Francisco,
Okay.
daughter in Chicago,
Okay.
3 granddaughters in
Oh, really?
Chicago. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, thank you so much for coming on the program. We really appreciate it. And I've learned a lot since you've been sitting there.
well, good. Good. Yeah, it's just a lot.
Yeah.
People don't really think about it. Even when you talk to the sheriff, and he'll say, I need more of this and I need more of that. I'm like, when you're asking for that, do you ask for more of all the other stuff so we can support that?
Mhm.
It's never done
It's like
together.
an unfunded mandate, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You want this and this and this, but there's no money. Where you get the money from?
Right. The detention center is overcrowded. Where are you gonna put the people?
Stop arresting.
Well, you can't arrest everybody. Everybody's not a problem just because you don't like
How
how,
many
they're
times
living.
have you toured CCDC, by the way?
Oh, not many.
No.
I think once or twice. If I can avoid that, I'd never wanted to go over there. But we tried to make the best out of the situation, and also, when I first started and before, they used to keep people in jail up to like 8 days before you'd see a judge, before any of that.
What happened to
And that's
bail?
changed. What happened to it? It wasn't set. It would be set at standard bail, which would usually be so cost prohibitive nobody could get out. And then they'd stay there for 8 days, and they called it the 8-day kick out. And yeah,
Is that to get federal
and
funding?
there was, I don't know what it was for. I'm sure that was part of the reason they were doing it, but ultimately they were sued.
Mhm.
Karen Winkler and
I know that name.
I forgot the other gentleman's name. He died from a brain tumor. He was really pretty phenomenal too. Anyway, they sued, and that changed, and then we got the 48-hour thing, and now we've gone from that to 20. The initial arraignment court. So there's some movement. There's some
Unless you
movement.
get hit on jail on a Friday night, then you're pretty much.
Well, no, because they have court Saturday morning.
Oh, do they?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the
So you
Friday
don't
night?
talk about that.
Hmm.
The initial arraignment court. Yeah.
Who does that?
Well, whoever's on duty.
Oh.
So once you rotate, so you get a week when you're on duty. So it goes for how many judges down there now? 14.
Mhm.
So for every 14 weeks, we all had a duty where we're on call. So when you're on call, that means everybody can call you in the middle of the night for a warrant, whatever. But also that means you do the initial arraignment court on the weekends.
You brought up something that I wanted to ask, but I forget. When you have warrant duty, did you sign off on all the warrants?
I signed off. No, you mean physically?
Or whatever. How you approve?
You
all the
approve.
warrants?
Yeah, you approve when you're
Did
on
you
warrant
approve them
duty.
all, or there's some warrants you said no.
Yeah, there's some that you say no to. Most of them are fairly straightforward, but most of the time, they're approved. They're calling you. They're reading it over the phone. Now you can do it electronically, which is so much better, because you can actually see everything. But yeah, so they work, like on 24-hour call, and then that weekend, the court is managed by whoever's on duty for that week. So you don't have to worry about not being seen.
Right. Okay.
Which helps again. And the way we sold that to the county was, we can save you money on the back end, right? Because now you're not housing all the incidental offenders. You're only housing the really right.
Trouble.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you believe in the mental illness court, right?
I believe that there are people who have mental illness and who need attention. I don't necessarily think it needs to be managed or supervised by a judge.
About Veterans Court.
I think the only reason for Veterans Court is because your services are so specialized and only provided to veterans. Nobody else is eligible. So to put you in like a general court would really kind of defeat the process of efficiency, quite frankly. Because I can send you over here, I can't send her, right? But I know that if I have somebody from the VA in my courtroom, they can get you signed up and da-da-da. It's just an efficient process.
Right.
On the other side of it, I don't know.
Right. Well, I know I said Thanks for being a bunch of times.
We're way over.
Again, Judge Karen Bennett-Haron,
Yes.
thank you so much for being on the program.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. Stephanie Phillips, thank you. Folks, that's retired Las Vegas Justice of the Peace, Judge Karen Bennett-Haron, retired. And we're going to be looking to work with her so she could run for another seat. Supreme Court. This is Steve Sanson and Stephanie Phillips. We hope that you are educated on this show. And until next time.